Members, the Senate is back in session. We are working the daily file. Members will recall that when we recessed, members, if we could have quiet in the chambers, please. We are working the daily file. We are on unfinished business, items 48 through 60. Are there any members wishing to take up remaining items? File items 48 through 60. File items 48 through 60. Seeing and hearing none, members, that takes us to Senate third reading. Senate third reading is items 68 through 77. Senator Wright, I know you have two items you'd like to take up. Could you tell us the file items of those numbers, please?
69 and 70, Mr.
69
President.
and 70. One moment, please. Members, if we could ask the members to return to the Senate chambers, retake your places. Senator Wright, we're going to come to you in just a minute to take up two items that are on the Senate third reading file. I do want to announce that the Delta Select Committee hearing, which was scheduled for today, has been postponed and will be rescheduled on another date. Once again, the Select Committee on the Delta hearing that was scheduled today has been postponed in light of the late hour and the fact that there is still unfinished business on the Senate floor. Senator Wright, you are at file item 69. Secretary, will please read. One moment, Senator. Secretary, please read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 106 by Senator Wright relative to the Deputy Chief Kenneth O. Garner Memorial Highway.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, some of you may recall last year we had a adjourn in memory of Los Angeles police officer Deputy Chief Kenny Garner. This bill would create a highway in my district that would be named after Deputy Chief Garner. I'm not aware of any opposition. The Los Angeles Police Protective League and the LA Chamber of Commerce are going to cover the cost of the signage and the other things for the freeway, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Members, we are at file item 69. Is there debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Aye. Calderon. Cedillo. Cogdill. Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Denham. DeSaulnier. Aye. Ducheney. Aye. Dutton. Emerson. Aye. Flores. Aye. Hancock. Harmon. No. Hollingsworth. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. Aye. Leno. Aye. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Negrete McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Padilla. Pavley. Aye. Price. Romero. Aye. Runner. Aye. Smidian.
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Aye. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Aye. Wright.
Aye.
Aye. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee. Aye.
Call the absent members.
Calderon. Cedillo. Aye. Correa. Aye. Denham. Aye. Dutton. Hancock. Hollingsworth. Aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Oropesa. Padilla. Price. Walters. Wiggins.
Call the absent members.
Calderon. Dutton. Hancock. Oropesa. Padilla. Price. Walters. Wiggins.
Senator Wright places the measure on call. File item 70. Secretary will please read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 107 by Senator Wright relative to Rudolph B. Davila Memorial Interchange.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this also is the naming of a highway, and it's for Mr. Davila. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Mr. Davila, and I know that time is an urgency here. Mr. Davila was born in El Paso, Texas, and he was raised in the Watts portion of my district. He was a Filipino-American who fought in World War II. His service included an act that prevented a 130-man rifle company in World War II from being killed by the German army in Italy. 56 years later, Mr. Davila, who again was raised in Watts, California, received a Medal of Honor from then-President Bill Clinton. It was also in conjunction with some of the past injustices that were done to Filipino Americans. Mr. Davila was injured later in a battle in France in 1944 where he received the Purple Heart. He had to win 13 operations to address the injuries. He never restored the full use of his right arm. Mr. Davila went on to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and he had a successful career of 30 years where he was a teacher and administrator in the Los Angeles Unified School District. Mr. Davila died in 2002 in Vista, California. He is survived by his 2 children. He is currently buried in Arlington National Cemetery, where he was buried with full military honors for having received the Medal of Honor from the United States. I would ask for an aye vote to recognize Mr. Rudolph Davila for his service to the United States of America.
Thank you, Senator Wright. Senator Weiland on this item?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of you know that I've worked hard and managed to get a bill passed to encourage students when they study American history to hear the personal stories.
Senator Weiland, one moment, please. We don't have the attention of the House. Members?
I'll start again because I think this is important. I had a bill passed that encouraged in the teaching in high school of American history to hear the personal stories of veterans and those on the home front, because I think that those stories bring home the reality of the sacrifice. And it just so happens that I happen to have met Mr. Davila and heard him speak at an event in Oceanside, near Vista. And I was so saddened by his death because his description of that sacrifice was one of the most powerful I've ever heard. And he did that by describing, both in Italy and in France, the deaths in combat of one young man in Italy and one young man in France, describing who they were, what their aspirations were, what they were good at. And it was a low-key speech. It was very, very powerful. This was clearly an individual who had certainly deserved that Medal of Honor later, and is tremendously worthy of remembrance and of this recognition of his service.
Thank you, Senator. Is there further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Senator Wright, would you like to close?
I would appreciate an aye vote, and I think, again, to recognize someone who provided such great service to our country, earned a Medal of Honor, is buried in Arlington Cemetery, who was of Filipino descent. And a lot of people forget that there was a significant group of Filipino Americans who, for the better part of 5 centuries, were never recognized for not only the services they provided to the United States, whether it was in Bataan and in some of the battle in the Pacific, but in some cases they weren't even granted the rights that they were entitled to until the 1990s for military benefits and honors that they were entitled to. I think it's the least that a grateful nation can do to recognize Mr. Davila for his great service to the country. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Aye. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Aye. Calderon? Cedillo? Cogdill? Cedillo, aye. Cogdill, aye. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Aye. Denham? Aye. DeSaulnier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? Emerson? Aye. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Aye. Hollingsworth? Aye. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? I, Romero. I, Runner. I, Smidian. I, Steinberg. I, Strickland. I, Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. I, Wright. I, Wyland. I, Yee. Yee, aye.
Ayes 33, noes 0. The resolution is adopted. Senator Wright, with your concurrence, I'd like to lift the call at this time on the previous item, which was file item 69. File item 69, we're going to lift the call. Please call the absent members.
Calderon. Dutton. Hancock. I, Oropesa. Padilla. I, Price. I, Walters. Wiggins.
Ayes 32, noes 1. The resolution is adopted. Senator Price, with your concurrence, I'd like to lift the call on your item. Senator Price, if you could remind us of the file item. File item 51, members. This is the Senator Price item from earlier this afternoon. Call the absent members on file item 51, please, Mr. Secretary.
Calderon. Ducheney. I, Oropesa. Steinberg. I, Walters. Wiggins.
Ayes 21, noes 13. The bill is passed. Members, I'm going to go to Senator Ashburn, then I'm going to go to Senator Denham, then we're going to pause a moment to identify the order of business for the remainder of the day, but first we'll be going to Senator Ashburn. Senator Ashburn, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
Mr. President, to present a measure, it's file item 73, Senate Bill 884.
File item 73. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 884 by Senator Ashburn, an act relating to taxation and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, this bill is an urgency measure because it deals with changes that this legislature made to the use tax filing requirements in California. What this bill does is simply provide a 6-month extension for tax filers to meet their obligations, and then also in years ahead to set the dates by which these taxes shall be reported. It gives clarity in an area where there was no clarity because of the changes that we made in the timing that we made them. Senator Wolk has been extremely helpful as chair of the Revenue and Taxation Committee in helping us put together this measure, and so I'd ask for your support.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn.
Aye.
Aye. Calderon. Cedillo. Aye. Cogdill.
Senator who?
Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. Denham. Aye. DeSaulnier. Aye. Ducheney. Aye. Dutton. Emerson. Aye. Flores. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Harmon. Aye. Hollingsworth. Aye. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. Aye. Leno. Aye. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Neglect McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Price. Aye. Romero. Aye. Runner. Aye. Smidian. Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Aye. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Aye. Wright. Aye. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee, aye.
Ayes 33, noes 0 on the urgency. Ayes 33, noes 0 on the bill. The bill is passed. Senator Denham, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
Item 198.
This is file item 198. File item 198. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 2156 by Assembly Member Evans, an act relating to veterans.
Mr. President, members, AB 2156, sponsored by the Veterans Home Allied Council, would permit the Veterans Home Allied Council to represent veterans who reside in the Veterans Home for which the council was established in matters before the legislature. This bill clarifies the right of the Allied Council to advocate on behalf of veterans This bill has received unanimous support throughout the process, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Aye. Calderon. Cedillo. Aye. Cogdill. Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. Denham. Aye. Dusaunier. Aye. Ducheney. Aye. Dutton. Emerson. Aye. Flores. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Harmon. Aye. Hollingsworth. Aye. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. Leno. Aye. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Negrete McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Price. Aye. Romero. Aye. Runner. Aye. Smidian. Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Aye. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Aye. Wright. Aye. Weiland. Aye. Yee. Yee. Aye.
Call the absent members.
Calderon. Dutton. Kehoe. Aye. Oropesa. Walters. Wiggins.
Ayes 33, no 0. The bill is passed.
Mr. President, ask for immediate transmittal.
Without objection, so ordered. Members, here's the order of business for the remainder of the day. There were 2 items that were before the Senate Natural Resources Committee. The Senate does not yet have possession of those 2 bills. When the Senate has possession of those 2 bills, we will take those 2 bills up. In the meantime, we're going to try and make some progress on the file. I'm going to go to Senator Correa, who's been quite patient because he has an introduction to make, I believe, and then I will go to Senators Wolk, Flores, Padilla, Corbett, and Yee in that order. So, Senator Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Senators, please help me welcome 3 students. 2 French-Fordham exchange students here, Estelle Goodwin and Quentin Mercer, and an Antelope Valley High School student, Joshua Williams, in the back of the chambers. If you can join me welcoming them. They're here learning about our California democracy. And also, Mr. Pro Tem, if I get permission to bring them on the floor for some photos.
Without objection, permission is granted. Senator Wolk, before we go to your items, members, we just want to confirm with Senator Negrete McLeod. Senator Negrete McLeod, you're still planning to have business and professions meet upon adjournment of the session today. Is that correct?
Well, it depends. If we're going to be here in the night, we're going to be in the morning. What time do you anticipate we're going to get out of here?
I want to thank you for your commitment to have a Business and Professions Committee hearing immediately upon adjournment. Thank you, Senator. And Senator Kehoe, I understand that we're still planning to have a Senate Appropriations hearing also immediately upon adjournment.
Yes, Mr. President. We do have a slight update on the schedule. It should be around a half an hour, so if we could get in there immediately after session, we'll move it along as quickly as we can.
Thank you very much. And members, once again, the Delta Conservation, Conveyance, and Governance Select Committee hearing is postponed indefinitely. Members, if we could go now to Senator Wolk. Senator Wolk, what file item do you have?
File item 207.
File item 207. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 2626 by Assemblymember Jones, an act relating to public officers.
Mr. President, 2626 by Dave Jones is a district bill that authorizes the Sacramento County Sheriff to contract the services of the sheriff's security officers to those entities engaged in a business that supports national defense or whose facility qualifies as national critical infrastructure, or who manufacture or store material that, if compromised, would pose a danger to the national security of the United States or to the residents of the County of Sacramento. This does not require any organization to contract. It merely authorizes for the contracting. It has the support of the County Deputy Sheriff's Association and the County Sheriff, John McGinnis. Passed out of Public Safety, 7-0. I ask for your aye vote.
Is there debate or discussion, members? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll. File item 207, members.
Onnested. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Calderon. Cedillo. I. Cogdill. I. Corbett. I. Correa. Denham. I. Dusanier. I. Ducheney. I. Dutton. I. Emerson. I. Flores. I. Hancock. I. Harmon. I. Hollingsworth. I. Huff. I. Kehoe. Leno. I. Liu. I. Lowenthal. I. Negrete McLeod. I. Oropesa. Padilla. I. Pavley. I. Price. I. Romero. I. Runner. I. Semidian. I. Steinberg. I. Strickland. I. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk.
Aye.
I. Wright. I. Wyland. I. Yee. Yee. I. Kehoe. I. Correa. I. Onnested. No. Ashburn. I.
Ayes 33, noes 1. The bill is passed. Senator Wolk, you have another item, I believe.
I do. 361.
File item 361. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 2564 by Assemblymember Swanson, an act relating to state finance.
Mr. President, 2564 simply changes the annual release date of the Department of Finance's tax expenditure report from September the 15th to February 1st. Having the report available in February will ensure we have the necessary information to address part of California's fiscal condition. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Senator Emerson, your microphone is up, but I'm thinking it's not on this item. Thank you. Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Calderon. Cedillo. Aye. Cogdill. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. Denham. Aye. Dusanier. Aye. Ducheney. Aye. Dutton. Emerson. Aye. Flores. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Harmon. Aye. Hollingsworth. No. Huff. Kehoe. Aye. Leno. Aye. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Negrete McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Price. Aye. Romero. Aye. Runner. Aye. Semidian.
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Aye. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Aye. Wright. Aye. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee. Aye. Ashburn. Aye.
Ayes 28, noes 1. The bill is passed. And Senator Wolk, you have one more item?
I have one more. 374.
File item 374. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1952 by Assemblymember Nilo, an act relating to vehicles.
Mr. President, 1952, Jarrett's Law will address a glaring oversight in current law relative to motorcycle permitting and licensure for individuals under the age of 21. The impetus for the bill was a terrible accident in Mr. Nilo's district that resulted in the tragic death of a young man named Jared Cole. His brother Sawyer and his friend Michael, now seniors at the Waldorf School, approached Mr. Nilo to author legislation to address the deficiency in the current motorcycle licensure process and the timing of the on-bike training requirements. Currently, minors may, after passing the written test, receive a permit and begin operating a motorcycle immediately. They can't obtain a license until they receive the on-the-bike training, but this leaves a very dangerous window of time between permitting and licensure during which an individual with no instruction in the actual operation of a motorcycle is able to operate it legally. 1952 will close that deficit in the current law so that no family has to go through this. There is no opposition. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Aye. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Aye. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Aye. Denham? Aye. DeSaulnier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? Aye. Emerson? Aye. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Aye. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Aye. Semidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? Aye. Walters? Wiggins? Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? Aye. Yee? Yee, aye. Cedillo, aye to no. Onnested, no.
Ayes 31, noes 3. The bill is passed. Members, if I could have your attention for just one moment, please. It's my understanding from the Secretary's office that we do now have the 2 water bills that are ready for consideration by the Senate. First item, AB 1260, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. President.
AB 1260. Senator Huff, are you presenting on this item? Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1260 by Assemblymember Fuller, an act relating to California Water Commission.
Senator Huff, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, AB 1260 provides that the newly appointed membership of the California Water Commission are to serve 4-year terms expiring in May 2014. After that date, the statutory staggering of terms resumes among the 9 commission appointees. The need for such a realignment of the terms of commission members is clearly necessary. AB 1260 provides stability with the revived CWC as it addresses a number of critical water infrastructure issues, particularly the development of criteria by which storage projects may receive state funds and the selection of storage projects pursuant to the water bond. It's important to maintain the cohesion and the experience of the commission members as these extensive multi-year processes move forward. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Aye. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Aye. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Corbett? Correa? Aye. Denham? DeSaulnier? Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? Emerson? Aye. Flores? Aye. Hancock? No. Harmon? Aye. Hollingsworth? Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Lowenthal? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Aye. Semidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? Aye. Walters? Wiggins? Wolk? No. Wright? Aye. Wyland? Aye. Yee? Yee, no. Denham? Aye. Hollingsworth? Aye.
Call the absent members.
Calderon? Cogdill? Corbett? No. DeSaulnier? No. Dutton? Liu? Oropesa? Walters? Wiggins?
Ayes 26, noes 5. The bill is passed. Members, that takes us to the second in this pair of water bills, AB 1265. This is without reference to files by Assemblymember Caballero. Senator Cogdill, I believe you are presenting. And members, a reminder, this bill requires a 2/3 vote. Secretary, please. One moment. Senator Cogdill, if you wait just a moment while we make sure that copies of the legislation are available to members. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 1265 by Assemblymember Caballero, enacting to the Safe, Clean, and Reliable Drinking Water Supply Act of 2012 and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Senator, one moment, please. Members. One moment, please, Senator Cogdill. Members. Thank you. Senator Cogdill, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. AB 1265 is a simple bill that would move the water bond election from November of 2010 to November 2012. At the end of last year, this legislature made history by approving the first major investment in our water infrastructure in almost a century. The final product was a compromise which earned a supermajority in both houses, a supermajority equally made up of Republicans and Democrats, something that certainly in my tenure has been very rare, if not the only time that I've seen that happen. Since then, misinformed critics have criticized the bond many times for reasons that have nothing to do with the bond. But each time a critic argues against the comprehensive package to provide a safe, clean, and reliable water supply, I ask them simply, where is your alternative? There's a reason why the water wars have been the most contentious public policy for decades. And if someone has a better plan that has a chance of earning the support of this legislature and the voters, I'll be the first to lend my support. But members, much like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, I'm afraid this utopian plan does not exist. So that brings us back to reality, which is this comprehensive plan that does more for the state's water supply than anything else that has been passed in this legislature for decades. Let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, especially when the well-being of our environment, the economy, and the livelihood of our citizens rely upon having enough water to meet our needs. I'd argue few people would like to see this investment happen sooner than I would. While getting this approved by the legislature was my top legislative priority, getting it approved by the ballot is my personal mission. So if we need more time to educate voters about this investment, then I'm certainly willing to wait to accomplish that. And with that, members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Senator Wolk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to this bill. I believe we should repeal this bond and revise this bond. We should let a new governor and a new legislature have a crack at it. This won't get any better in 2 years. What we are doing today is to, in addition to delaying the bond, is we are removing one of the sections that has to do with mutual water companies and their ability to access public funding. The section that is amended only applies to the surface storage projects that have something to do with the CalFed surface storage projects. That section of amendment will not apply to groundwater storage projects in the Central Valley, nor will it apply to any of the other $9 billion that's in the bond. We've had a problem with private mutual water companies profiting from highly subsidized public water being sold at incredibly exorbitant rates in the millions of dollars and pocketing the profits. We have not stopped that with our amendment, that potential. What's really wrong with this bond right now is that it is fiscally irresponsible. The kinds of projects that are in there don't really focus on what is the key issue in California water, the true need of California water policy, which is to reduce the reliance on the Delta. That's what should be the focus of all our efforts and all the money. And to do that, we need to do recycling, cleanup, any project throughout the state of California that can reduce the reliance on the Delta is really the kind of policy we should be encouraging. Not the kinds of projects that are that this bond is full of. We don't need a $10 million expenditure in Siskiyou County. Bless Siskiyou County, it's a nice place, without a match. An institute at CSU for $50 million when we're raising fees at CSU. Tahoe water taxis at a time when transportation is cut dramatically. And water education centers, building buildings like that when we're closing schools. For the next, between the time the bond begins to be sold, bonds are begin to be sold, and the year 2049 or 2050, and probably longer now, each year there will be a call on the general fund of between $600 and $800 or $900 million. Each year, education will lose. Each year, children will lose. And each year, the taxpayer will lose. And heaven knows what will happen if Prop 22 passes, what that means in terms of our transportation payback that we have taken general fund money to do, which will no longer be legal after that. So we need to reduce the reliance on the Delta. We need to revise this bond. We need to repeal it, revise it, and focus it on the true needs of California water. I ask for your no vote.
Senator Denham.
Mr. President, members, let me be very clear once again about my opposition to the water bond that's on this year's ballot. It spends way too much money. Votes were bought off with projects that have nothing to do with our water crisis. Voters around the state see right through it. It also does not guarantee that we solve our water crisis because there is no guarantee on sites or temperance flats. I know that there are members that would disagree with me, and I know that there are members that are confident with the language. But I've seen too many bonds that have been undone after they've been passed, and I believe the voters of this state deserve a guarantee. Now, I think that we've had a great water discussion this year. I think that this bond probably moves things forward more than the water issue has been moved forward in the past. And it deserves greater debate. I do not want to see this bond come up on the November ballot only to fail and have those naysayers around the state say, see, we don't need water storage. We don't really have a water crisis. So I'm willing to support this today to give us more time to amend some of the things out of it that we disagree on. This water crisis has to be solved. The Central Valley depends on it. We've got 20% unemployment in many areas of the Central Valley. Our entire state needs a full water solution. We have to have a guarantee on storage, and we have to have a bond that's fiscally responsible. Moving this to a future year will allow us to do both. I would ask for an aye vote.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Steinberg.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to urge members to vote yes on this extension, and I want to actually agree with some of the comments that my friend and colleague Senator Wolk made a few moments ago. The issue around California water is, in fact, how to reduce reliance on the Delta. Put another way, one of the key issues in California around water is how do we restore the ecosystem of the Delta? And I think it is important to point out that as a result of the comprehensive work we did last year, not just the bond, but the significant policy bills, the first action of the State Water Resources Control Board was to say, in preliminary fashion, that the Delta itself needs more water. Now, that's not a conclusion necessarily that some of the folks who, from the Delta especially, who were against or concerned about the water grab and the impact of this bill, but I think that's a pretty darn good start. I will not stand here and tell you that this bond is perfect, because it's not. It was the product of political compromise. And I'm comfortable with it going forward intact to November 2012. But for those of you who are skeptics or against it, what greater opportunity would you have to improve it than to delay it for 2 years? You know, and there is some precedent here, members. If you remember the high-speed rail measure passed in this legislature, I believe it was in 2002, was continued 3 times because it wasn't ripe and ready for different reasons. And you know what? It eventually got to the voters in new and improved fashion, and the voters said yes, and hopefully continued good work ahead. We are on the way to building a high-speed rail system in California. So vote yes. The process is beginning to work for everybody, including the areas I represent, the Delta, the water flow standards, as I mentioned a moment ago. 2 years to deal with the imperfections in the bond. I urge us to do so. Let's move ahead. Urge and I vote.
Is there further debate or discussion, members? If not, Senator Cogdill, would you like to close?
Just briefly, thank you very much for the debate. I look forward to the, unfortunately, it won't be the Wolt Denham bond, but because he's going to happier hunting grounds. But again, I think the point was well made by both of those that testified for completely different reasons. And again, it just highlights how difficult it was to get to this point and why it's important, I think, to move it at this juncture to the 2012 election and again, spend the next 2 years educating the people of the state as it relates to water and the needs and how we comprehensively address those rather than to look at one side of the equation or the other. As for my vote.
Members, once again, a 2/3 measure. We have an urgency here, yes? It's not showing on the board. Two-thirds vote required. Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Aye. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Aye. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Aye. Corbett? Correa? Denham? Aye. Tisanier? No. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? Aye. Emerson? Aye. Flores? Hancock? No. Harmon? Aye. Hollingsworth? Aye. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? No. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Smidian?
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? Aye. Walters? Wiggins? Wolk? No. Wright? Aye. Wyland? Aye. Yee? Yee, no.
Call the absent members.
Calderon? Corbett? Correa? Aye. Flores? Aye. Oropesa? Runner? Walters? Wiggins?
Ayes 27, noes 5.
Corbett, no. Runner, no.
Ayes 27, noes 7 on the urgency. Ayes 27, noes 7 on the bill. The bill is passed. Senator Cogdill, you're going to request immediate transmittal to the Assembly. Is that correct, sir?
You read my mind. Thank you.
And Senator Huff, you're going to ask immediate transmittal on the previous item. Is that correct, sir?
AB 1260, yes, sir.
All right. Well, then, without objection, so ordered. Members, we are going to try and wrap up with just 1 or 2 more items. Senator Ashburn, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
To request immediate transmittal on the item that we took up earlier, Mr. President.
Without objection. Senator Padilla, you have one item. Is that correct, sir? Secretary, please read.
Well, before I present the item, request on behalf of Assemblymember Solorio to move AB 677 off of the inactive file.
Without objection. So ordered.
And the request is to take up item 54, which is SB 525.
Members, the item is file item 54. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 525 by Senator Padilla, an act relating to correctional facilities.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, appreciate your patience. SB 525 is back for concurrence, and I present it along with Senator Harman, who's a co-author on the bill. The goal of the bill is to crack down on the proliferation of cell phones and other wireless communication devices in California prisons by making it a misdemeanor to smuggle or illegally possess a phone or device with the intent to distribute it to an inmate. Many of you have heard me speak on this issue before. This is the third year, and the problem continues to grow. This bill would not only make it a misdemeanor, but it would be punishable by a fine of up to $5,000 per phone or device. I don't think it takes much thought to conclude that cell phones in the hands of inmates present a clear and present threat to the safety of correctional officers and other employees, other inmates, and the general public. As was highlighted in the front page of the Sacramento Bee just last week, the problem is growing exponentially. When I first started doing my homework on the issue, it was the year 2007, and the numbers were out for 2006, when 261 cell phones were confiscated throughout prisons in the state. Last year, calendar year 2009, that number had grown to nearly 7,000. So clearly, it's a growing problem. Prison inmates have been caught with iPhones and BlackBerries. This isn't just regular cell phones. This year, 2010, we're on track for yet another record number of seizures. Throughout the country, these devices are known to have been used to plan escapes, to violate restraining orders, and to operate criminal enterprises. In Maryland, for example, a cell phone was used to order a hit on a witness during a trial. Exactly 1 year ago, there was a riot at a prison facility in Chino. More than 250 people were injured in that riot before guards were able to regain control of that facility. And while no one was killed, I'm concerned that the next time, it's only a matter of time before there is a next time, prisoners would use cell phones to coordinate attacks either within a prison facility or at multiple prison facilities, and public safety officers would be overwhelmed. This may sound like an exaggeration, but let's consider what happened in Brazil just a couple of years ago, where inmates in that country staged simultaneous riots at 70 prisons, as well as on the streets of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Over 40 officers and guards were killed during the first 4 days of unrest. It's not too far-fetched. The attacks were coordinated and planned using cell phones. In fact, regularly scheduled conference calls between inmates were taking place. Left unchecked, I'm afraid that some of us in this chamber could soon be receiving calls like my friend, State Senator John Whitmire from Texas received. He received a call on his personal cell phone from an inmate reminding the state senator that the prisoner knew the names of his daughters and where they lived. By the way, this was from an inmate who was on death row. California's current law does not provide any criminal sanctions for those responsible for providing cell phones to inmates. This bill is the first step in changing that. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion. Senator Romero.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. I think this is an important measure in securing public safety. But Senator Padilla, I have a question. Senator Padilla, I have a question. The bill, I want to make sure that we all understand, this includes not just a visitor to a prison, but it would also encompass staff as well.
Yes.
Okay, so it is again to visitors and or staff who may slip a phone to an inmate.
That is correct.
Okay, I think it's a very strong measure. I would urge an aye vote.
Is there further debate or discussion, members? Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Padilla, you may close.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Aye. Calderon. Cedillo. Aye. Cogdo. Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. Denham. Aye. DeSaulnier. Aye. Ducheney. Aye. Dutton. Aye. Emerson. Aye. Flores. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Harmon. Aye. Hollingsworth. Aye. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. Aye. Leno. Aye. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Nicoleta McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Price. Aye. Romero. Aye. Runner. Aye. Smidian. Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Aye. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Aye. Wright. Aye. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee, aye.
Ayes 34, noes 0. The bill is passed. And amendments are concurred in. Members, that completes our business on the daily file with the exception of consent calendar and special consent calendar items. Before we address those items, Senator Padilla, do I understand you have an adjourn in memory?
Yes, Mr. President. Colleagues, no, Senator Kehoe would be interested in this one as well. I ask you to join me in adjourning in memory of Dana Appling and that we offer her family our thoughts and our prayers. She's the director of the Division of Ratepayer Advocates at the Public Utilities Commission, and just this afternoon lost her battle with against cancer. She was appointed to the position in 2004 by Governor Schwarzenegger, but only after having established a tremendous and successful career both in the private sector as well as in the public sector. From 1989 to January 2002, she worked for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, spending the last 8 years serving as both General Counsel and Secretary of the Board of Directors. Previous to that, she spent 4 years working in the Office of Legislative Counsel. She's a graduate of UC San Diego Law School, and she received her bachelor's degree from Pomona College in Government. Did a tremendous amount throughout her career, not just understanding technology issues, but specifically dedicating her skills and expertise to advocating on behalf of consumers and ratepayers and better public policy. We will miss her tremendously.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Please convey the sympathies of the Senate to the family and friends, and if you'll bring that name forward to the deck so we can ensure that these memorial remarks are properly recorded. Senator Kehoe, for what purpose?
I would just thank you, Mr. President, and to the chair of our Utilities Committee, Senator Padilla. Thank you for adjourning in memory of Dana Appling. Dana was a San Diegan, and preceding Senator Padilla, when I was chair of the committee, she was always responsive, always informed, always available to the committee in her work as the director of ratepayer advocacy at the California Public Utilities Commission. She was a San Diegan. She loves San Diego, as I do, and a woman of dignity and poise, very always kind and ready to serve the public. She will be missed here and in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Wright, for what purpose, sir?
Well, to add as well, I knew Dana. In fact, I talked to her about 3 days ago. Her breathing was labored, and we were laughing about things that we'd done 10 or 15 years ago. Her daughter, Bianca, is kind of a budding actress. Her son is kind of involved in some things in law enforcement and building his career. We spent probably the majority of the time just talking about kids. It's an interesting thing as you get older, your discussion becomes about kids and grandkids, and you tend to fade further and further into the background. She fought against cancer for about the last 4 years, but she never lost her spirit and her desire to want to serve California and just be a great mother and an advocate. We were actually having a debate the other day about a matter of public policy and whether or not transmission lines were needed in the San Diego area, and ORA is opposed, and she was arguing then about why we shouldn't do the transmission lines and why they shouldn't be there. I think everything else certainly has been said, but certainly her spirit, her kindness. We were in the midst, as a matter of fact, I think we completed it today, a resolution that we were going to present to her in San Francisco. She clearly wasn't strong enough to travel, but wanted to try to do that. I, again, spoke to her as often as I could. I called her yesterday, and her daughter let me know that she was too weak to speak on the phone, but she was nodding. Her daughter told me that to tell him, you know, I'll talk to him tomorrow. So I didn't get that last conversation, but for those who knew Dana, or for those who didn't know Dana, you missed the opportunity to know a great public servant and truly a smart lady. And certainly her youngsters will miss her. I mean, her children are grown, but but her friends and family will certainly miss her, and ORA will miss her, and California will miss her as well.
Thank you, Senator Wright. Senator Yee, for what purpose?
Adjourn in memory.
Please proceed, Senator.
It's with grave heart that I announce the passing of Bill Lane, who was the first mayor of Portola Valley, where he's lived for 54 years and was a regular participant in local government since 1964. Bill, along with his brother Mel, were co-publishers of Sunset Magazine, which helped to define the image of California in the American public. He was ambassador to Australia and Nauru, serving and served his country in some capacity under every president from John F. Kennedy to George W. Bush. Born in Des Moines, Iowa, Bill moved west with his family and graduated from Palo Alto High School, went on to become a Stanford grad and served as a flag lieutenant in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Bill was a dedicated environmentalist and a generous philanthropist. He was one of the largest donors to the Peninsula Open Space Trust and regularly supported causes relating to conservation and preserving our environment, including the California State Park Foundation and National Parks Conservation Association. He also started the campaign to restore the governor's Stanford Mansion, which has since been declared as a state park. Because of his generosity, San Mateo County and the entire Bay Area is blessed with his understanding and sensitivity about our environment and about leaving something for our future generation. He's survived by his wife, Donna, and 3 children, and a lot of grandkids, but most importantly, we will always remember him as someone who really cares, not about the present, but more importantly about the future, and want to adjourn in memory on his honor.
Thank you, Senator Yee, and I have also placed an in memoriam request for today's session for Ambassador Lane, and I'm pleased to join you in recognizing his passing in this way. Really an extraordinary and vital contributor to California. Members, at this time, in the absence of other in memoriams, it would be appropriate for us to take up the consent calendar. Unless there's any objection, we could substitute the unanimous roll call on both the consent calendar and the special consent calendar. File items 384 to 386, file items 387 to 433. Seeing and hearing no objection, ayes 34, no 0 on the consent calendar, ayes 34, no 0 on the special consent calendar. The consent calendar and special consent calendar are approved. If there is no other business, Senator Steinberg, the desk is clear.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, I know the Appropriations Committee is going to meet in 4203 immediately after adjournment. Members, since we obviously are in the last 3 weeks of the session, I have a lot of work to do, including a budget. We're going to meet Wednesday at 9:30 in session here to work the file, probably go until 1 o'clock or so. Noon, 1, 6, 7, I don't know. No, probably noon or 1. And then Thursday we'll meet at 9 o'clock and go for at least 2 hours. And we'll try to get through as much business as we can. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. Let's confirm once again with Senator Negrete McLeod that the Business and Professions Committee will be meeting in what room, Senator?
We're going to be meeting in the room out there.
3191?
We're going to do s'mores, and we're going to do the campfire over the nighttime.
Immediately upon adjournment, members, the Senate will be in recess until 6:30 today, at which time the adjournment motion will be made. We will reconvene Wednesday at 9:30. Without objection, the Senate stands in recess.